But let's not talk about the inherent conflict that arises from minorities and majorities existing in a particular system because they are competing for the resources which are, instead of distributed correctly based on output and based on actual performance and based on need, instead can be hoarded by a very small subclass, a very, very small minority in the country, a class minority, which then leads to the constant and eternal infighting between people of different cultural identities and ethnic identities and even gender identities inside of a state, literal cause and effect of wealth accumulation and the capitalist structure. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about what? Like fucking black people being pilots? Speaking of hot takes, let's go to the hottest of takes. The battle between two of my favorite quasi-reactionaries. I'm kidding, not quasi, very much reactionaries. And that is Tutskir Kuratson with my boy Alexander Duga. Famous pro-LGBTQ activist Alexander Duga, because Duga means rainbow in Serbo-Croatian. Famous pro-LGBTQ, pro-liberal values boy Alexander Duga. Let's get into this. Prepare your brain in the typical Dugin fashion. Prepare for him to say a lot of words and to say absolutely nothing. Okay? Let's go.
Alexander Dugin is a 62-year-old Russian academic philosopher. He spent his life in Moscow. He was an anti-Soviet dissident as a young man. And now he is famous the world over, in the English language press anyway, as, quote, Putin's brain. But he is not a political...
Hello, my name Putin brain. I mean... He's a bit too large to be put his brain, but hey.
Figure here in Russia. He is, again, a philosopher. And his ideas are deeply offensive to some people. In August of 2020...
I love how Tucker is like lubing up the American conservative audience. They're like, he was anti-Soviet and he's very controversial and people are very offended by his ideas. Therefore, you de facto must like it because your whole identity is dunking on the libs.
Two, his only daughter was murdered.
Putin brain, more like pudding brain.
In Moscow when a car bomb killed her. U.S. intelligence says she was murdered by the Ukrainian government, and we take that at face value. But what's interesting is that once again, Alexander Dugin is not a military leader. He's not a close daily advisor.
Trumka, if Dugin is a philosopher, then I'm a tree in the forest. If Dugin is a philosopher, I'm Spider-Man.
To Vladimir Putin, he is a writer who writes about big ideas. And for this, his books have been banned by the Biden administration in the United States. You cannot buy them on Amazon. Banning books in the United States because the ideas inside are too dangerous.
Yes,
he's often described again in the English language press as
my beautiful conservative viewers. He is banned by Biden. That means he is a good guy. Please watch. Please click on Putin.
Far right. We'll let you assess. But we wanted to talk to him about some of his ideas, these ideas that are so dangerous that his only daughter was murdered over them, and his book's been banned in the United States. And so we're happy to have him join us now. Mr. Dugin, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we were talking off camera. Actually, we're having a conversation that we were not going to film, just interested to meet you. But what you said was so interesting that we got a couple of cameras and put this together. And my question to you was, what do you think is happening in the English language countries? And I said, all of them, United States, Canada, Great Britain, New Zealand, Australia, all at once decided to seemed to turn against themselves. You had this great turmoil, and some of the behaviors seem very self-destructive. And where do you think, as an observer, that comes from?
So I could just...
My boy said nothing. Very self-destructive behavior. What the fuck does that mean? What the fuck is that? What? Give me an example, my brother in Christ.
Express my reading of that. It demands a little patience. So I think that everything started with individualism. So individualism.
Oh my God, he's about to do a Putin. He's about to go. So 1,000 years ago, we were an amoeba.
That was a wrong understanding of the human nature, of the nature of man. When you identify individualism with the man, with the human nature, you cut all the relations to everything else. So
Correct.
you have very special idea.
But let's guess, he's going to say that there is such a thing as a core principled ideological human nature after this. He says we need to have a council of chief patriots that decide which oligarchs are the good ones and which are the gay European liberals. Sounds about right.
of the subject, philosophical subject, as individual. And everything started in the Anglo-Saxon world with Protestant reform and with nominalism.
Oh, brother, fucking Christ. Individualism was started with the fucking Protestant reform. Okay, let me let the man speak. I'm sorry.
For that nominalist attitude that there are no ideas, only things, only individual things. So individual, it was the key and is.
This is the classic fucking like obsession with religious institutions as the only driving factors behind the way that people see the world and see themselves. Like, I don't know if there's a word, like religion essentialist. This is what these guys always fucking do. No, it doesn't matter what the material relations inside of a society were. It doesn't matter what the hierarchical structure of a society. It doesn't matter the relationships between the local cultures, between men and women, etc., etc. No, the only thing that matters is what we all agreed on should be church dogma versus what we changed church dogma into and how that further influenced our behavior. This would be true if the fucking 1,000 popes didn't behave in extremely non-Catholic ways, my dude. The fucking chiefs of the fucking church, okay? You can be a believer without actually doing anything that your book fucking espouses, and most people don't. But okay, let's listen to our Rainbow Boy.
Still key concept that was put in the center of liberal ideology. And liberalism, as in my reading, it is a kind of historical and cultural and political and philosophical process of liberation of individual of any kind of collective identity, collective or that transcends individual. And that started with refuse of Catholic Church as collective identity, of empire, Western Empire as collective identity. After that, it was...
The fucking peasants working the fields of Normandy were turned to individualism because they could no longer identify as much with the French. My dude, the only thing they identified with is their fucking donkey plowing the fucking fields and how much percentage of the fucking carrots they just made that day goes to the king or doesn't. What fucking identity with empire did fucking peasants on the ground have? Sure, the leadership of these states had, which obviously in all of the analyses of people like this, that is the only people who fucking matter. And the fucking mass land-owning class, sure, had greater identity with the empire and later on switched to a more individualist identity, which through a Marxian analysis we just called the bourgeois, replacing the fucking aristocracy of old, right? But the fucking everyday peasant gave a fuck about the fucking onions he needs to fucking make. Nobody identified with empire. Show me a single fucking anthropological book or historical book that talks about great national identity before the French Revolution, except in the fucking 0.1% elites in these particular states. The fuck are you fucking... Jesus Christ. For a man criticizing liberals, this is a purely liberal analysis, like to it at its core.
After that, it was a revolt against a national state as collective identity in favor of purely civil society. After that...
in favor of civil society, what the fuck does, in your context, civil society even mean? The lack of identity with the nation state is literally born out of your ability to differentiate yourself from your fellow citizens inside of the nation state. And the main way you do this is through class division. The first people who put themselves as more important than their fellow citizens became such individuals because they started participating in what? Commodity exchange and capital accumulation. They became French second and bourgeois first. Capital accumulation over national identity. Capital accumulation that sometimes even circumvented so-called national interests of the citizenry and the state itself. And in turn, as they started exploiting the working people through their accumulation both of capital and the means of production, they slowly created different identities, class identities and cultural identities, remember structure and superstructure, inside of, let's use France as a particular example. And that killed the idea of the, oh my God, such great national identity and shit as number one thing, because you started seeing that there are different interest groups inside of the nation state itself, which under the guise of so-called individualism basically said, sure, you're French, but what matters more is how much fucking capital you can accumulate. And I do not only compete against the German and the Brit as a proud Frenchman. No, it is more important for me to compete with the fellow Frenchman because I get to accumulate capital potentially and better my position in society. Literally, this hyper-competitive environment that is stimulated by the fucking capitalist hierarchical structure that is introduced to the nation state is what pushes people to hyper-individualism, because I matter less than my state, I matter less than my people, I matter less than even my family, etc., etc.
After that, there was a big fight of the 20th century between liberalism, communism, and fascism, and liberalism has won once more.
Yes.
So, and after the fall of the Soviet Union, there was only liberalism, and Francis Fukuyama has pointed out correctly that there are no more any.
The same Fukuyama who I believe changed his mind on the end of history, but okay.
Ideologies except of liberalism, and liberalism that was liberation.
And these guys that are so like you can see it in their fucking eyes and in their particular rhetoric that they know exactly what they're talking about, but they are intentionally running away from using terminology like capitalism. That there is no alternative to capitalism. That is the end of history, to capitalism and the neoliberal version of capitalism, okay? But he cannot say this because that would imply class analysis. If you imply class analysis, then you have to talk about class. And if you have to talk about class, what fucking happens, I wonder? You come to certain fucking conclusions that don't go in line with all them goddamn trans peoples and them goddamn gays.
Of this individual from any kind of collective identity. There were only two collective identities to liberate from gender identity, because it is collective identity.
I'm going to have a fucking stroke, I swear to God.
Or any ideologies except of liberalism. And liberalism, that was liberation of this individual from any kind of collective identity. There were only two collective identities to liberate from gender identity, because it is collective identity. You are man or woman collectively, so you could not be alone. So liberation from gender, and that has led to transgenders, to LGBT, and new form of sexual individualism. So sex is something optional. And
communism fell. Therefore, liberalism is the only option, not mentioning capitalism. So in liberalism, the whole point of liberalism is hyper-individualism. And because of hyper-individualism, we are critiquing absolutely everything, but not class. Not class for some reason. We're absolutely not critiquing class. So we're starting to critique all collective ideas of identity, including gender. Remember the last time you said, I am a man or I am a woman, because you wanted to belong to the great collective idea of unifying with your fellow men and women. What the fuck is this dude on about? Am I missing some deep fucking analysis here? It is not because we are fucking questioning patriarchy, we are questioning gender norms, we are questioning oppressive structures that make no fucking sense. No. It is because we want to be hyper-individualist. So we want to be extra special. So because of this, we will overcomplicate our life so much and become trans. I'm a very smart man.
So something optional. And that was not just deviation of liberalism. That was necessarily elements of implementation and the victory of this liberal ideology. And the last step that is not yet totally made is liberation from human ideology.
As we know, gay people and trans people have only started existing since the invention of liberalism. Right, and we really should criticize all those gay monkeys that we see. those fucking liberal monkeys doing gay shit again. Fucking god damn it, man! All that liberalism in the animal kingdom. You gotta fucking fuck with it.
And when now we are choosing, or you in the West, you are choosing the sex you want as you want. And the last step in this process of liberalism, implementation of liberalism, will mean precisely the human optional. So you can choose your individual identity to be human, not to be human. And that has a name: transhumanism, posthumanism, singularity, artificial intelligence, Klaus Schwab, Kurzweil, or Harari. They openly declare that is inevitable future of humanity. So we arrive to the historical terminal station that we finally, 5 centuries ago, we have embarked in this train, and now we are arriving at the last station. So that is my reading. And when all the elements, all the phases of that, you cut the tradition with the past. So you are no more Protestant, you are secular, atheist, materialist. You are no more nation state that served to liberate from empire. And now national state becomes at its turn obstacle. You are liberating from national state. Finally, family is destroyed in favor of this individualism. And the last things, the sex that is already almost overcome, sex optional, and in gender politics, there is only one step to arrive to the end of this process of liberation, of liberalism. That is the abandoned human identity as something prescribed. So to be free from to be human, to have the possibility to choose to be or not to be human. And that is the agenda, political, ideological agenda of tomorrow. That is why how I see Anglo-Saxon world that you have asked of. I think that is just the vanguard of.
Thank you very much, Pangerizzo, for the sub. Thank you very much for the gift of sub.
Empirism, nominalism, Protestantism, and now you are ahead.
Okay, so wait. Okay, so draw online. You have Protestantism, very simple cross, which leads to the individualism, which leads to questioning all things communal, which leads to trans people, let's use TR, which leads to aliens. That's the premise. That is the premise. I'm not oversimplifying. That is the premise. The Protestant to trans to aliens pipeline, which is born out of the questioning of the collective. My man Dugin be like, these motherfuckers rather be aliens than what? Let's hear his alternative, because he's not saying these motherfuckers rather be aliens than communists. Let's see where it goes. What is his proposed solution to us becoming humans, to us becoming aliens? Okay, let's not become aliens.
As Anglo-Saxon, more devoted to liberalism than any other European.
So what you're describing is clearly happening, and it's horrifying. But it's not the definition of liberalism I have in mind when I describe myself as what we say in the United States as a classical liberal. Right? So you think of liberalism as individual freedom and choice from slavery.
So deep.
Right? So the options as we conceive them.
Except when it's a corporate structure and you get a bit of money instead of not being paid absolutely anything, then that's the slavery I fuck with and will die to protect.
As I was growing up, were the
Oh, but wait, but he doesn't have to be a slave because he's a fucking capitalist. Oh, goddamn.
individual who can follow
Will the aliens also be trans? Will they be hot or busty? What does alien pussy feel like? Do you need lube or does the alien cloaca get wet for you? These are the questions that Tucker Carlson needs to be asking. Exactly, Galen.
his conscience, say what he thinks, defend himself against the state versus the statism, the totalitarianism embodied in the government that you fought against, the Soviet government. And is defend himself against the state versus the statism, the totalitarianism embodied in the government that you fought
Just words that mean nothing. They're just saying words that mean nothing.
against
Words
the Soviet
nothing.
government.
Like nothing. This
And I
means
think
nothing.
most Americans think
Nothing.
of it that way. What's the difference?
Very interesting question. I think that is the problem is in two definitions of liberalism. There is old liberalism, classical liberalism,
Yes.
and new liberalism. So classical liberalism was in favor of democracy. Democracy understood as the power of majority, of consensus, of individual freedom that should be combined somehow with the freedom of other. And now we have totally the next station already, next phase, new liberalism. Now it is not about the rule of majority, but it is about the rule of minorities. It is not about
Exactly! The minorities of the bourgeois class, which leads us to further alienation from our own spirit, body, and purpose by getting all the fucking shit and not giving us any. Oh, wait, no, that's probably not what he's going to talk about.
individual freedom, but it is about wokeism.
Oh, it's about the wokeism. Man, America, you've won. The guy who's the so-called Putin's brain, the Russian, is talking about wokeism. Okay? You have won the cultural battle. You have won everything. The Russians have lost. Rest in fucking peace. You have Dugin talking about wokeism. Fuck. And this guy wants to uncuck Russia, and he's talking about wokeism. He's talking about trans people. He's talking about... He's literally just gotten off a fucking American fucking forum, okay? But no, this guy wants to uncuck Russia. Fuck yeah, dude. This dude's fucking more American than a fucking 14-year-old groiper, okay? Oh, American cultural conquest is absolute. Oh.
So you should be so individualistic that you should criticize not only the state, but individual.
Redditor. There you exactly. Excellent. Exactly. Dugin is just a redditor.
Individual. So you are invited to liberate yourself from individuality, to go further in that direction. So I have spoken once with Fukuyama, Francis Fukuyama, on TV, and he has said before democracy has meant the rule of majority, and now it is about the rule of minorities against majority, because majority could choose Hitler or Putin. So we need to be very careful with majority, and majority should be taken under control, and minorities should rule over majority. Majority, it is not democracy, it's already totalitarianism. And now we are not about defense of the individual freedom, but about prescription to be woke, to be modern, to be progressive. It is not.
But let's not talk about the inherent conflict that arises from minorities and majorities existing in a particular system because they are competing for the resources which are, instead of distributed correctly based on output and based on actual performance and based on need, instead can be hoarded by a very small subclass, a very, very small minority in the country, a class minority, which then leads to the constant and eternal infighting between people of different cultural identities and ethnic identities and even gender identities inside of a state, literal cause and effect of wealth accumulation and the capitalist structure. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about what? Like fucking black people being pilots? Like, these guys are just stupid. Or, in his case, they are just reactionaries and they intentionally want to push away from class conscious analysis of society. Because, I don't know. that's against the fucking grift, or they're just bad fucking people, or they believe in the inherent validity of the capital owner. And thank you, Romko, for the another 100 bits. He's the archetype of a hurt rightoid redditor. These sukas are making everyone woke, blad. Yeah, exactly. Man, these sukas, everybody woke, blad. But you must see woke, man. Slava России.
It is not your right to be or not to be progressive. It is your duty to be progressive, to follow this agenda. So you are free to be a left liberal. You are no more is free enough to be a right liberal. You should be a left liberal, and that is a kind of duty. It is prescription. So liberalism fought during its history against any kind of prescription, and now it at its turn became totalitarian, prescriptive, not.
He literally said earlier that this hyper-individualism eventually leads to the destruction of everything that is prescriptive, to a point that even being human will be questioned. And now he's saying that it's totalitarian and prescriptive. You're either so radically anti-totalitarian that you even question being a member of your species as a human, which again, that is the totalitarian future that he's talking about, which is insane. Like it's like anti-quote-unquote totalitarian on steroids. Or you are what you're saying right now. These are opposite things, Mr. Dugin.
Not free as it was in some.
And do you believe that was inevitable? That process that was always going to happen?
I think that is. I perceive here a kind of logic. So a kind of logic that is not just perversion or deviation. You start with one thing, you want to liberate individual. When you arrive at the point.
Dugin chief anti-fascist, definitely not projecting what he would do, yeah.
when it is possible, it is realized. So you need to go further. So, and you start to liberate yourselves from this time from old understanding.
There is a context if he had an ounce of class consciousness, a context in which this critique of liberalism could work. And that's the one that we talk about here all the time. And that is liberalism's ability to pretty much engulf any social cause or any type of questioning of different oppressive structures while never addressing class, right? So capitalism can commodify the discussion about LGBTQ rights, about trans rights, about a relationship between cis men and women, about the relationship between different ethnic minorities in the country, while ignoring the class issue, because at the end of the day, it only wants to create more worker bees, etc., and it wants to distance itself from the inherent reaction, but not in a reactionary way, as funny as it sounds, of people against the system that they find at this point exploits them, right? That is a critique that he could offer, but he does not want to include class analysis in absolutely any of this. And it just turns into just reactionary opinions on Jesus Christ, these guys are giving up on all the traditional values that we've had as genders and as peoples and eventually as our species. Oh my Lord, they're going to all become aliens, etc., Because again, it lacks the most basic fucking class undertones that are what underpins any sort of intersectional analysis. Because again, it would be against his personal interests.
Of individual in favor of more progressive concepts. So you could not stop here.
Even though what I said previously, that it can engulf, for example, more LGBT rights, more minority rights, etc., it only does so on the surface. That's number one. Because, okay, you are acknowledged, let's use the most, taboo, even though for me, it's not taboo, but whatever. For these guys, taboo conversation, okay, trans people. So yes, sure, capitalism can commodify trans identity, and, everybody will actually treat you as, a woman for somebody who, is a trans woman. But you'll still be a poor woman. You'll still be an exploited woman because you got to work. You'll still be treated like shit by your capitalist overlords because the class question will not be addressed. I mean, this is a ridiculous oversimplification that I'm giving here, but you get my fucking point. So it only addresses these things on the surface. That's number one. And number two, when capitalism inevitably, because it always does, gets into a point of crisis, it will pull all these so-called privileges that it has given to oppressed groups back in order to stimulate nationalism, patriotism, reactionary mentality inside of further festering fascist rhetoric inside of the state in order for it to stop itself from completely degrading as capitalism in decay. Yep. This is all that he could say, and he probably, to an extent, understands. But no, because you got to do the fucking grind set, okay? Suka Vok Европейski are consuming Russia. The transformers are coming. We need to assemble the most chauvinist oligarchs and financial capital to defense against Suka Vok Европейski. Oh, God.
That is my vision. So if you...
Yeah, Yana Gibashi, more trans concentration camel guards, exactly.
Say, oh, I prefer old liberal...
To facilitate further overexploitation of the workers. Yeah. I think we're all on the same page, Chad.
They would say, the progressives, they would say, it is not about old liberalism, it is about fascism. You are a defender of traditionalism, conservatism, fascism, so stop here. Either be progressive liberal or you are done, or we will cancel you. That is what we observe.
He's saying this as he's talking to fucking Tucker Carlson, the most uncancelable of cancellables. Like, he's saying that the main authoritative tool that liberalism has is if you go against it, it will cancel you. Have you heard about the Republican Party, my dude? What the fuck are you... He is doing liberalism because, again, he's hyper-focusing on identity. What do liberals do? They hyper-focus on all identity except class identity. And he's doing so when critiquing liberalism. This Russian anti-liberal is a literal Burgerlandian liberal. You can't write this shit.
Well, it's certainly what we're living, and to see self-described liberals ban your book, which is not a manual for bomb making or invading Ukraine. It's these are philosophical works, tells you that it's not, of course, it's not liberal in any sense. I wonder, though, like, when you reach the point when the individual can no longer liberate himself from anything, when he's just not even human, what's the next step after that?
And like, so what? Even if we reach a point where we're fucking aliens and we're making like mixed human alien fucking babies or whatever the fuck, or like we colonize a planet that is so far away that no longer connects to Earth human culture and it wants to create its own thing. Bad, why? And I'm the first like human ultra patriot or whatever the fuck. And I genuinely believe you can manipulate to play on some certain fascist inclinations that humans tend to have because they've been raised in bourgeois society for so long, to use it to unify our species through internationalism on the premise of stating that nationalists or human sectarians, as I would call them, go against the great humanist project of developing a human empire or whatever the fuck, but a human empire that can only be self-sufficient through a late-stage socialist system, right? You could use that, and I would play on that. I would write a fucking book on this. I think it would be very interesting to look at it from that premise as like a human patriot, like human patriotism, like hardcore humanism, like borderline like humanist chauvinism against species that we've never even met, because it doesn't really hurt these species that we haven't met, but it allows us to use this tribal mentality against tribal reactionary ideology, etc., etc. Managed democracy, though, but like unironically I'm talking about this. Even if we ignore that, so what? We go and we stop being quote-unquote human at one point. We become something different. Why is that so? Why bad? Why bad? Why bad? We question being human. Okay, why bad? They don't offer this. Man, I hate myself that I'm even participating in like why being human bad. Like these premises that they put forward that are absolutely batshit fucking insane. But even these premises that they put forward that are batshit insane, like the consequence, Protestantism, liberalism, trans people, aliens. Even inside of it, okay, so what? Okay, so what?
That is described in the pictures, American pictures, films, in many ways. So I think that that all the science fictions, almost all of the 19th century, were realized in the reality in the 20s. So there is nothing more realistic than science fiction. And if you consider Matrix or Terminator, you have so many more or less coinciding version of the
Who made Matrix?
future, the future with the post-human or human optional situation or artificial intelligence. Hollywood has made many films. I think they portray correctly reality of the close future. So
like, this is your future. This fucking grandma talking about trans people turning into aliens. This is your schizo future unless you have a class-based analysis of material fucking reality. This is like playing D&D, but like IRL. Like it's a disease. It's a literal fucking disease, in my modest opinion.
For example, if we consider the man, the human nature, as a kind of rational animals, so you could now with our technology, you could produce them. So you could create rational animals or combine them or construct them. And artificial intelligence, strong artificial intelligence, neural network, plus huge database, it is a kind of king of the world, I would say, that could not only...
Oh my God, a deep analysis. What if AI? What if AI really smart and it does Terminator and Matrix on us? I am a very smart man.
Only manipulate, but create realities, because the realities are...
Oh, and now, like this is like 2 a.m. and you're talking to one of the dumbest dudes you've ever known, and you're like on your 7th fucking vodka, and he's like, dude, what if like AI takes over the world? And now he's moving into, dude, look at me in the eyes. What if we all live in a simulation, dude? And this guy sells books. This guy sells books.
Just sensations, just feelings. So I think that post-humanist futurism is a kind of not only realistical description of the very possible and probable future, but as well a kind of political manifest. So it is not, that is kind of wishful thinking. And the fact that you have no bright traditional future described in the films. I don't know any movie of the feature in the West made about return to traditional life, the prosperity, the families with...
There's a guy, he died today that wanted to do that. Okay? There's a lot of movies about that. A lot of movies about returning to, empire, hyper-racialization, group belonging without class analysis. There's a lot of movies, Dugin. There's a lot of movies. There's like a very decent amount of films. Very, very decent amount of films.
Many children. Everything is quite in shadow, quite black. So if you used to paint everything black, and the future especially, so this black future once arrives, and I think that is the fact, the same fact that we have no other option, either Matrix or artificial intelligence, or something, or
again, my boy is talking about wokeism, about Matrix, about Terminator, about living in a simulation, and about AI ruling the world. This is an American Redditor. This is an American guy from Reddit. And not even with a lot of upvotes, right? Because even for Reddit, he was like, dude, like there's like 100 threads that talk about this. Why the fuck did you make another one in r/traditionalist? my dude is literally just this.
How many liberals does it take to change a log light bulb? None! They're too busy. Their gender. Mayday! This is Delta 29er. We are losing altitude.
Shadow Rich Gang just took your soul, and you're never getting it back.
But this is your intellectual giant. No matter Man, Russia, rest in peace, dude. Holy fucking shit, man. Our Lord. But I love how like a couple of months before this guy's kid got killed, I'm sitting in a little bar talking to one of my best Russian friends. But he literally told me, like, dude, Dugin in Russia is like a meme, like a deep internet meme. Like everybody's like, what the fuck, Dugin? What the fuck? And then after they blew up his fucking car, I was like, what the fuck were you telling me? Like the Ukrainians tried to assassinate him. That means that he has some influence, etc., etc. And he literally said they just gave him influence, which is one of the chills to this day. And they did give him influence.
Terminate.
Smallest Ukrainian L.
So the choice is already outside of the limits of humanity, and that is not just fantasy. I think that is kind of political project, and it is easily imagined because we have seen the films. They follow more or less close to this progressive, I would say, agenda.
So I've asked you no question.
Hollywood be making films about sci-fi, about future and future dystopian, and Hollywood sci-fi very good at guessing future dystopia, and they are making these movies because they want this dystopia to happen. What about AI? What about virtual reality? Oh my God, so scary. Again, I'm harping on the joke too much. Dugin is a liberal. Mic drop. Dugin is a liberal.
Questions about
An American liberal.
Russian politics that I'm not going to, because I think it's so interesting to...
The Transformers are coming to take away the children and make us gay with aliens.
see your perspective on
Because movies say so.
countries that you don't live
Liberalism, am I right?
in, because, we do gain insight, I think, from the view of outsiders. My last question to you is, how do you explain this phenomenon I have noticed where for over 70 years, a group of people in the West and the United States, liberals, effectively defended the Soviet system and Stalinism, and many personally participated in Stalinism?
Tucker Bill like, man, this guy's talking too much about movies and fucking space aliens. We need to make him shit on the Soviet Union.
Spied for Stalin, supported him in our media. In the year 2000, and they loved Boris Yeltsin because he was drunk, but in the year 2000, leadership of this country changed and Russia became their main enemy. So after 80 odd years...
The main reason Tucker pushes this, and you can watch it in my video, which is one of the proudest ones I've ever had, is because he sees as China as the eternal enemy, and he is doing active PR, not because he's paid by Putin or whatever, but because he's a very smart American capitalist and nationalist. He wants to push for a more pro-Russian perspective in the United States because he understands that the current foreign policy of the United States is pushing Russia in China's arms, and that in the long run cannot be sustainable for the United States themselves. That is why he's using this platform to push this particular thing. He has also many times said that American culture is quote-unquote compatible with Russian culture, wink wink white people, while completely incompatible with Chinese culture, wink wink Asians, wink wink communists, and therefore we need to do all we can to get Russia on our side instead of pushing them to the Chinese. This is why this rhetoric exists. Literally. I have fucking citations. I have him saying it with his own fucking words in interviews where he felt comfortable enough to share this, okay? I have unfortunately read like 30% of his book because I would have otherwise died. Okay, I didn't pay for it, thank God. That is why he's doing the whole like, we need Russian friends, etc., etc. Not because he likes Russian people, not because he respects them, not because he respects Russian leadership, and not because he's getting Russian money, but quite literally because he thinks that is the direction that American foreign policy is supposed to go into.
But in the year 2000, leadership of this country changed and Russia became their main enemy. So after 80 odd years of defending Russia, they hated Russia. How?
They didn't hate Russia, but if you're talking about the leftist, Tucker, the Soviet Union dissolved and it was no longer a socialist state. It was yet another just capitalist enterprise. So they no longer supported yet another capitalist enterprise. Surprise, surprise. Oh, my Lord.
What was that? Why the change?
I think that, first of all, Putin is traditional leader. So Putin, when he came to power, From the very
Thanks to the United States State Department, let's not forget, Putin was our guy quite literally until like 2010.
beginning, he started to extract our country, the Russia, from the global influence. So he started to contradict to global progressist agenda. And these people who supported
They hate Putin because he's a traditionalist and doesn't like the gays. Yes, very much so. America known for changing its foreign policy towards states because they are hyper-traditionalist and homophobic. Like this guy is saying that America is a principled country and it started changing it. Not because Russia started questioning the international unipolar world order. No, it's because he didn't like the gays.
the Soviet Union, they were progressists. And they are now progressists. So they have felt that now they were dealing with someone who doesn't share this progressist agenda and who tried.
Remember, ladies and gentlemen, when Biden wakes up in the morning, he's like, we need the progressist agenda. We want to make all humans alien and give consciousness to animals. And what about, we want AI. We really want AI. That is why we need to fight Russia, because Russia believes in traditionalist values and strong men with big muscles, big muscles with oil on them and very hairy chest. And now they're rubbing, oh wait, the different podcast.
And with success to restore traditional values, sovereignty of the state.
But yes, good point, Yanagibashi. I mean, the gay hating was how they sold it to live voters in America. Absolutely. Just how they sell hating on Palestinians because, oh my God, they're homophobic.
Christianity, traditional family, that wasn't evident from the beginning.
Megalesma. Mr. Putin wakes up in the morning and asks Alfred, have we gotten rid of the progressist agenda yet, da?
Outside. But when Putin insisted more and more on this traditional agenda, I would say, on the particularity and speciality of the Russian civilization as some special type of world vision that had and has now very little similarities with the progressive.
I'll leave you with this American liberal for a second while I go blow my nose. I'll be right back.
Ideals. So I think that they have discovered, they have identified in Putin precisely what Putin is. So he is a kind of leader, political leader, defending traditional values. So only recently, 1 year ago, Putin has made a decree of the political defense of traditional values. That was turning point, I would say. But observers from the progressive...
It wasn't questioning the American military-industrial complex through the intervention back in 2014 in Ukraine and the constant assistance for al-Assad in Syria. No, it was because he passed a law about defending traditional values. This is a classic reactionary propagandist that knows exactly what he is doing. This guy believes in nothing, just wants to get more power and more capital. This is a LARPer. This is a so-called professional philosopher, a commodified philosopher that doesn't even do fucking philosophy. If this is philosophy, then I don't know. I'm fucking John Locke.
Camp in the West, I think they have understood that from the beginning of his rule correctly. So this hatred is not just casual, something casual or some mood. It is not.
It's not casual. It's very serious.
So it's metaphysical. So if you're
Do you even know what it's metaphysical?
If your main task and main goal is to destroy traditional value, traditional family, traditional states, traditional relations, traditional beliefs, and someone on that with the nuclear weapon, that is not smallest, the least, but the last but not least arguments. Someone with nuclear weapon stand strong defending traditional value you are going to abolish. I think they have some basis for this Russophobia and the hatred for Putin. So it is not just by the chance. It's not some irrational change from Sovietophilia to Russia phobia. It's something deeper, I would say.
It's the Soviet Union was socialist. It is no longer socialist, so they do not support it because the reason they supported it is not because of Russophilia or Ukrainophilia or Kazakhstanophilia, but because it was socialist, and leftists no longer do so. Not at least in that context. A lot of leftists support it because it's questioning the unipolar world order, etc., and there is some arguments to be made there that are absolutely legitimate, but not because he believes in traditional values. The amount of intellectual masturbation you need to do to get to this particular conclusion is awe-inducing, and again, just signifies that this guy is just a fucking LARPer.
I guess.
It's clearly something deeper. We felt it was important for your ideas to get an airing in English in the United States simply because we believe in the open airing of ideas. I guess we're liberals that way. So we're grateful that you took the time. Mr. Dugin, thanks.
Thank you very much.
The intellectual titan to beat all intellectual titans. Holy fucking shit. How many views does this have? 19 million. Very nice. God damn, bro. Watch U.S. Marines GoPro that challenges Pentagon's accounts of attacking Kabul. Yeah.